The next card to be added to Marvel Snap is Kang the Conqueror, and as confirmed by Steven Jarrett on Twitter, he will be the third big bad to join Series 5, and just like Thanos and Galactus, there are currently no plans to move him from Series 5. So unlike other cards which will eventually make their way all the way down to Series 3, Kang, Galactus, and Thanos are currently not planned to move from Series 5, and as a result of that, regardless of the conclusion we come to in this video of how good Kang is or how bad he is, I highly recommend that if you are going to spend the 6,000 tokens on a Series 5 card, that it should be Kang, Galactus, or Thanos. Alright, let's jump into the summary. Kang is a 5/0 with the effect on reveal. Look at what the opponent did and then restart the turn without Kang. There are so many implications to this effect, so let's get some of the important information out of the way. This information comes courtesy of Rada, an associate game designer at Second Dinner. They were answering some questions on Twitter, which was super helpful, so shout out to Rada for being so helpful on Twitter. I'll leave their links in the description if you're interested to go check out their feed. Kang does indeed reset snaps. I actually wasn't expecting this, so this is good news for Kang. The reason this is good news is because you can snap representing a stronger hand than you have, trying to bait out a retreat from the opponent, or if the opponent snaps, you can just play Kang to see what they're going to play and then decide to retreat afterward. There are situations where you would rather Kang not reset the snaps, but generally, Kang resetting snaps is really good for the Kang player because it gives you significantly more information to work with than the opponent. If they snap, usually that's to leverage something, like say they're about to play Leech on turn 5 and they snap, you playing Kang essentially avoids the -1 or -1 additional cube you would have gotten. If you top deck Kang and then play him that turn, once the turn resets, you'll effectively draw a new card, making him essentially a +1 card draw, but only when you top deck the card. Now, I'm not exactly sure of the specific implications of this, but the RNG outcomes are the same both before and after Kang resets the turn. So, for example, and again, I don't know the exact implications, it could be unique interactions, I'm not exactly sure, but from what I understand, for example, if the opponent played Jubilee, and that Jubilee pulled Infinite, and we played Kang on that turn, the turn would reset, and then if the opponent played Jubilee again, that would always pull an Infinite. So they didn't get lucky if they pulled Infinite twice in a row, it was always going to happen both before and after Kang. All the RNG in the game is quote-unquote predetermined. We already know this because bots react to RNG outcomes, that's why they'll play into Danger Room knowing it's completely safe. So there's obviously behind-the-scenes logic that handles RNG before the cards are played. Alright, let's go over some cards that directly synergize with Kang. Firstly, I want to mention Electro, Wave, and Psylocke, the 3 ramp cards in the game, all have quote-unquote direct synergy with Kang because it increases the window of playable turns that we can top deck Kang on. So for example, Kang being that +1 card draw that we talked about before, that can only happen on turn 5 and 6 because those are the only turns we are able to play Kang naturally because he's a 5-cost card. But if we play a ramp card on turn 3, like the aforementioned Electro, Wave, or Psylocke, that also makes turn 4 a possible turn that we can top deck Kang and then effectively turn him into a draw 1. In a similar vein, Magic allows you to top deck Kang on turn 7, and Jubilee and Lockjaw can both pull Kang early. Neither of these will result in a quote-unquote card draw, but they do effectively remove a card from the deck, effectively increasing your draw consistency. This is potentially really important, and we'll talk a bit about that a little bit later in the video. So, is Kang good? How is he good? How do we use him? Kang, put simply, is a core card for combo decks, or decks that otherwise, or for whatever other reason, want to get as deep into their deck as possible. He's also good for leveraging snaps and fold equity. For this reason, I think Kang's likely home is going to be Galactus. So you can imagine I'm very excited as a big Galactus player. I'm very excited about the future of Kang. I've brought 5 Kang decks today. Some are just alterations of a prior version that I want to mention, so don't get too excited about 5 decks. It's all essentially a similar package, but I just want to talk about the differences and variations in all of them. So first of all, let's get into a null Galactus list. This is pretty much identical to the null Galactus list I currently run. All I've done is slotted in Kang over Shang-Chi. I think this list with Kang might just be consistent enough that we don't need to run Shang-Chi, but if I'm wrong, here is an alternative version that includes Shang-Chi, and basically all I've done here is slot out both Wave and Spider-Man, because if we're not running Spider-Man, we don't need to run Wave over Psylocke, because Psylocke is quote-unquote better than the Wave unless we are running that Spider-Man combo. So as a conclusion of the 2 decks that we just went over, to include Kang in this package, I think we either need to cut Shang-Chi or we need to cut Spider-Man, just because we do need to cut something, and they are the most vulnerable cards in the deck. Yellow Jacket and Adam Warlock are essentially required for this strategy, I think, and then of course we need at least our 2 ramp cards. I really like Jubilee in this package, especially now that we're adding in Kang as well. This next list is my Valkyrie Galactus list that I currently use. The only addition, or the only change, is that we've slotted in Kang over Rocket Raccoon. And I'll say this, of all the Galactus lists, I think Valkyrie versions are the least impacted or least improved by Kang, but perhaps that's something I'll change my mind on after some testing. Basically, the Valkyrie list has the most number of cards that are quote-unquote required. We need all the typical cards that we need in Galactus, our ramp cards, our Adam Warlocks, our Yellow Jackets, our Galactus. In addition to that, in Valkyrie, we need cards that can be played after Valkyrie. So in this case, we run Death, we run Sabretooth, and usually we run Rocket Raccoon, and we've had to make that cut for Kang. Instead, we're running Cloak, which can be played on the same turn as Valkyrie, assuming we played Electro that game. If we didn't play Electro, normally we'd want to play Rocket Raccoon instead. For that reason, maybe we cut Cloak and we add in Rocket Raccoon. But yeah, overall, I'd say Kang is very awkward in the Valkyrie package, and it's hard to find a card to cut just because the Valkyrie list is so tight. So there's a chance that Valkyrie Galactus lists don't even find room for Kang, despite how, in theory, Kang should be really strong for Galactus lists. We'll have to wait and see after some experimentation, but for now, I think this will be the weakest of the packages that we go over today. All right, lastly, I want to go over 2 deck lists that ultimately you can't actually play yet, and I'm sorry for that, but I think it's important to talk about this list in the context of Kang. This is my take on a turn 6 Galactus strategy, something that is very inconsistent right now. I'd highly recommend not playing something like this, but will be dramatically improved upon Nimrod's release, and considering Nimrod is just 1 week away, I'm going to avoid talking about the specific details of how he functions in this deck, but just know that this deck is significantly stronger with Nimrod, and we'll talk a bit more about that once I get around to making the Nimrod video closer to next week and closer to his release. Just know the idea is that we want to play Galactus on the final turn of the game. This deck fully commits to that strategy, so it runs Hobgoblin, Green Goblin, and Black Widow, a bunch of different cards that add cards to the opponent's side of the board, and then we want to Galactus on turn 6. Ideally, we would have Shuri'd something like that Green Goblin or Hobgoblin, or maybe we play Wolverine and Forge at some point, ultimately contributing power to our final location. We also run Destroyer as an alternative top end, which can sometimes close out games depending on the current board state. Personally, I'm not sure if he'll end up staying in the deck. We'll have to wait and see how consistent that ends up being. And because we want to Galactus on the final turn of the game, Magic is actually includable in this list because she does increase the turn count, and she does get us 1 card deeper into the deck, because we don't mind playing Galactus on turn 7 in this deck. It's possible that fully committing to this turn 6 strategy is just going to be worse than some type of hybrid list that doesn't mind playing Galactus a little earlier or a little bit later. So here's an alternate version of that exact same deck list, but this deck does run those 2 ramp cards. We've cut Black Widow and we've cut Forge, 2 cards that I think are really good in that turn 6 all-in strategy. But just in case fully committing to the turn 6 is just worse than doing some type of hybrid strategy that wants to maybe sometimes play Galactus on 5, maybe sometimes play it on 6, that unpredictable nature might be better than just running the turn 6 strat. Personally, I do think that the turn 6, or the final turn, I should say, is better, but I wanted a ramp version of this just to give you the option, and that's what it looks like. All right, so let's close out the video with the verdict. Firstly, I've heard people refer to Kang as some type of auto-include card that can be run in every deck. That is certainly not the case. Kang is a +1 card draw in some ideal scenarios, but that's only applicable for decks like Galactus that need to draw 1 specific card by a specific time in the game. Other decks will ultimately get punished for running Kang because he's effectively -1 card, because you're going to draw him quite frequently before being able to play him. So you'll draw him on turns 1 through 4, and you won't have the ability to play Kang, ultimately resulting in -1 card compared to your opponent, who has a card that they can actually play in their hand. That's not to say he's useless when he's in your hand in that situation, because obviously you can still leverage him for fold equity and snap equity, which we sort of mentioned a little bit earlier in the video, but that's an aspect of Kang which is extraordinarily important. Being able to reset those snaps and kind of play willy-nilly up until that point is very important. Funnily enough, Kang is actually a really good response to Leech, a card that a lot of people really don't like. You can snap on turn 5, you can play Kang, and if they respond with Leech, well, nothing mattered. We can just retreat. We know we're losing to Leech, so we can just move on. Overall, I'm really excited about Kang's release. I don't think he's going to be too good outside of Galactus, but in Galactus, I think he's going to find a real home. I'll be playing a bunch of Kang upon his release. I'm ready to go. I've got the tokens. I'm ready to exchange them as soon as he shows up in my shop. So I appreciate your patience. I hope you're looking forward to Kang as much as I am. I'll probably stream some of it or make some videos on it. So look forward to that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.